When I was a little girl, we would get sick, and my grandmother would make this awful honey and onion concoction. She would force us to drink it. We would be in tears. It was awful, and it made your breath stink. But we always got better. And life is like that. Life is sweet, but sometimes it absolutely stinks. I'm Kamryn Adams, and you're listening to Honey and Onion. This is the first episode of Honey and Onion, and my first time being back on the mic in 10 years. So you guys are going to have to bear with me for a little while. I'm probably going to have a lot of ums and likes, and every now and then you're likely going to hear my Southern Ohio Appalachian accent, because when I get really passionate about what I'm saying, it's been said that my accent comes out. So I am who I am and what I am, which is why I'm here with you for Honey and Onion. It's reality podcasting, real people and real issues. What a better way to start than to have my coach come on the show. This show is about getting through our issues, trudging through the onion in life while enjoying the honey. And the best way to do that is to have a coach or a counselor or good friends. Sometimes you need therapy. Everybody needs a coach. And so I have my coach on the show today just to help you guys get to know me a little better and understand more why I'm doing this, who I am, and a little of where I come from. So Pat, thanks for coming on the show and sitting down with me to help people get to know me better. But before we start talking about me, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for allowing me to coach you and to get to know you a little bit better. So, as you said, my name's Pat. I am a life and leadership coach, and I specialize in helping individuals to lead themselves and also to lead more effectively in business. And by training, I'm also an attorney. I'm a human resources executive, and personally, I'm a mom. I'm also a wife. I've been married for about 22 years, and I have a 12-year-old son who's in middle school and a 19-year-old son who is a sophomore in college. And I became a coach because one of my former lives, I was a mediator. And through being a mediator, I was required to be a good listener and to really help people facilitate their own solutions to the problems that they were bringing to mediation. And through that, I really saw the value of trying to help people and also organizations work through issues that they were struggling with and really come up with a solution that made them feel good about the outcome. So that's what led me to coaching. I am an ICF-trained coach, as you know, and I am really happy to be able to talk to you today.
So I'm excited because this gives the opportunity for me to show my listeners that I kind of walk the talk. I, too, am an ICF certified coach, went through my programs, and I always tell people, if your coach doesn't have a coach, that's a problem. So whenever you hire a coach, you need to ask them, like, well, who's your coach, or how do you develop? And if they don't have one, then they don't really believe in the concept of coaching. Every coach needs a coach. And so I encourage listeners to, when you do hire a coach, make sure they have one. And because of that, I have my coach, Pat is my coach, and she is here with us today. So instead of me talking to her, we're going to flip the tables.
All right. So the first question I would ask you, because coaching is all about the right questions, is what scares you about doing this show?
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Everything. Everything scares me about doing this show. But to be more specific, I think the biggest thing that scares me about doing the show is that it puts me in a vulnerable place. Deciding to do a reality podcast really gives people insight into who you are, into your life, into the way you think. And that's a little scary because people can judge you based upon that. I think the other thing is the show is designed to help people move forward. I mean, it is a coaching show in context, And we have this thing as human beings where we want to believe that other people are perfect. We want to find the expert, the person who's had the perfect marriage. You said you've been married 22 years. Like, I'm sure every day has just been bliss, right?
Right.
And the perfect kids, and everybody has the perfect. I say this all the time. Everybody's kid is a complete savant who does everything they ask all the time. And so we don't talk about the other stuff. And that's what this show is about. It's honey, life is sweet, but it's onion. Sometimes life stinks. And I am letting people into my world, and that's a little scary. And I think there are people who may think, what can I learn from her? Because she's, good and has been through so much and made so many mistakes. But then I think there's a level of wisdom that you really know that the smartest people in the world, the best people in the world, the most brilliant people in the world, of which I do believe I am one of, have made tons of mistakes. For me, life is about ministry, and you cannot minister to someone else what you haven't been through. And I think everybody who tries to help people, they do so because they've been through stuff, but they don't like to let people know they've been through stuff. So what scares me most about doing the show is just, I'm out here. It's why I, when approached about doing a reality TV show, I was like, you can't follow me with cameras. One, because I just don't even get dressed every day. So, yeah, but you can follow me with a mic. So that I think is the scariest thing, is letting people, it's vulnerable. I feel vulnerable, and I'm not good with that.
So let's talk about a couple of things, a couple of words that you use that I want to dig deeper into. So you talked about perfection and the appearance of perfection, and then you talked about being broken. So let's talk about what makes you appear perfect, we might say, to other people when you're really who you are.
It's been said of me lots of times that, it looks like I was born on third base. And I have no idea why people think that. There's a passage in the Bible about these lepers that are getting ready to go into a camp. They're like between where they were and where they were going. And they were about to go into this camp, and they were afraid. And one of them was like, let's just stay here and die. And the other one was like, let's go back. And then one was like, no, we're going to go. And so, God was like, just go. And I'm going to make it so people hear angels in the treetops, and they will think that an army is coming, and they'll run away. Right. And so I like to think my life is like that. When I'm walking, people hear angels in the treetops, and they think it's me. I think God I do. I think God has just given me, I don't know, a bow wrapped around all this mess that makes people feel that way. Because no matter how much I say, like, I'm broken, my life is not perfect, people say, oh, but you have all these great things, which is true. Even my childhood, that I had a very tumultuous childhood. My earliest memories are from brokenness. I don't ever remember being unbroken. And yet I also was, vice president of my class, and a champion dancer, and just best personality and everything else. And when people reflect on memories of me from growing up, middle school and high school, they don't have any memories of me ever being sad. I was always like the happiest person in the school. And the irony was, I had a whole painful life behind that. So I think some of that perfection is because I learned to wear a mask very early. And I think some of it is inside people. We want to believe that other people are perfect, so we have something to aspire to. When the truth is, no one's marriage is perfect. Nobody's kids are perfect. Nobody's life is perfect. And the older I get, I'm learning. I've never met anyone who said, like, oh, my childhood was the greatest. And I'm waiting to, meet that person. They may not have had the abusive childhood that I had, but that, everybody has stuff. As much as I try to raise my boys in what I perceive to be, perfection as possible, they're going to sit across from me one day and be like, you really, messed this part up. And that's just the reality of it. So right. I think it's twofold. I certainly think I wore a mask for a long time. And then I think people want to, believe in perfection.
So talk more about this mask. How did that develop? And would you say you still wear a mask today?
Oh, no. So let me answer the second part. I so do not wear a mask today. I got rid of my mask. I got rid of half of my mask. So I was kind of like Two-Face from Batman. I got rid of half of my mask when I had my second son, because I think that just happened. But I got rid of the whole mask when I turned 40 because I was exhausted and I couldn't be anymore what people wanted me to be. And that was holding on to that other half of the mask because people had gotten so used to the mask that I held on to half of it. The life of the party, the happy all the time, the woo, woo, woo. I tried to live up to that reputation. So the second half of the question, no, I don't wear a mask. Where did the mask come from? My earliest memories are of being abused as a little girl, as a child, before the age of 5. I couldn't tell you what age it began, but I know it was before the age of 5 because I remember my 5th birthday being petrified because perpetrators were in the room at that time. And you learn to live with that secret because at that age, you feel like you're the only one who that has happened to. How can you not think that? You're thinking with a 5-year-old mind or a 4-year-old mind or an 8-year-old mind. And so it was a habit. I don't ever remember putting a mask on and saying, oh, I'm going to pretend to be something different. Even throughout like high school, being super duper happy all the time or whatever, it was never an intentional, I'm going to pretend to be happy because I'm broken. It wasn't that. It was just my life. It was just the only thing I knew was to laugh and be silly. And it was genuine. It just was over top of the pain. I think children who are abused, particularly sexually abused, they usually become control perfectionists. Everything has to be controlled around them. Everything is about being the absolute best because you're trying to cleanse yourself. So I am the smartest, prettiest, cutest, funniest, nicest, kindest girl in the world. Feeling like you're not the dirty victim of what happened to you. Or you swing the other way. And, I thank God that I didn't swing the other way. There are people who never get past it. There are people who go into alcohol and drugs and just lead very destructive lives. And the hand of God was on my life. And so I took this perfectionist route, which what is not a healthy route at all. But it did allow me to survive to a point where I realized this is overcompensating. It's like positive stereotypes, right? There's negative stereotypes. It's like a positive stereotype. Like she is an overachieving, super duper marvelous person. And all of that was compensating for the pain. It took many years for me to unpack all of that. I didn't start going to therapy until I went to college. And then it was just a process. It's a process. You learn more and more as you go, and you don't realize you're wearing a mask. I had to learn to be real. And so the last part of the mask that came off was the part that said, I am not happy all the time. And there are people I don't like. And if I don't like you, you don't get to abuse me anymore. I'm not going to put up with your sarcasm. I'm not going to put up with your backhanded comments. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to do it for sake of being the nice girl or, I was voted best personality in middle school and high school. And that was my superlative. Like, I might not have the best personality anymore because I am tired of you. And that was the mask that came off. And at that point, I decided, that part of me on the inside that really wanted to be like a triple Christian. I've always loved the Lord. I've always loved the Bible. And I always tried to be normal with it, not like super duper over the top. And I think I'm normal with it, but I infuse God into everything I do. And I spent about 10 or 12 years trying not to do that. And on the inside of me, I just, when I had thoughts or feelings or revelations, I would keep them inside because I didn't want people to think I was crazy, or I didn't want people to think I was, a religious nut. And when I turned 40, I was like, okay, this is me. I'm Team Jesus, kind of a Jesus freak, but not the kind you think. And, and I have bad days. I have onions in my life. My life is great, but sometimes it stinks. And sometimes it stinks 50% of the time and it's great 50% of the time. And no one promised me any different. One of the challenges I have in like talking to people about faith is that I have no idea where this concept that, God is supposed to make everything perfect. And so when things aren't perfect, when there are mass shootings and disease and abused kids, that makes you question God.
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis, poor Eve, one of her kids killed the other one. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like from the very beginning of the Bible, there was pain and drama and loss. And life is like that. And, for me, I just decided to stop pretending that life didn't have those aspects and start trying to help other people realize, like, hey, bad stuff happens, painful things happen, and you have to figure out how to, live anyway.
Wow. Wow. So let me ask you another question. Now, you obviously have had a very rich and full life, both with joy. We're talking a lot about the brokenness, but I know there's been a lot of joy. And I know that, currently one of your themes is how you embrace your weakness and embrace your brokenness. Tell me how you came to that perspective.
I guess underneath all of it, the foundational thing is because hiding your weakness and hiding your brokenness is exhausting. And therefore, you're not only sad about your brokenness, but it limits your joy in the good stuff because you carry this baggage that you're trying to hide. It's one thing to take my garbage bag and pull it out to the curb. It's another thing to take it and try to hide it under my shirt and get it out there. Like, that's miserable. So I think that's the first thing. The bigger thing is, I have mentioned probably several times already today, like, I read my Bible. I love the Bible. I came to the conclusion that as a Christian, the Bible is my playbook. People who say, like, oh, I'm Christian, but don't read the Bible, then how do you know, like, what we're supposed to be doing? Like, if you play sports, you have a playbook, like, run the plays, and the Bible is the plays. And in the Bible, Paul, who used to really get on my nerves because he's a bit of a chauvinist, but I started to appreciate him. I started to appreciate Paul. And one of the things that he talks about is his brokenness and this thorn. So Paul had like a thorn in his side, and he said the Lord put it there. No matter what he did, like, it wouldn't go away. No matter how much he prayed, it wouldn't go away. And he came to this conclusion that God's grace is sufficient, that part of God being in his life was the fact that he could continue to live and thrive with this thorn. And he comes to this revelation that in our weakness is where God does his best work. It's where we shine. It's, the places where I'm most cracked are the places where I'm most effective.
Right.
What people loved about me, what drew people to me was, giving them advice and seeming to have so much wisdom and, all of these little things. And all of that was really coming from the brokenness that I had experienced. So as I started to learn the places where I was most effective, the places where people gave me the most positive feedback, really rooted from my weakness. And that's a biblical principle. The places where we're broken, that's what God is trying to use for you to shine in the world. Not the places where you think you're perfect. That's just not it.
So, one of the recurring themes in what we're talking about is how is perfection. So how you appeared perfect, you made an effort to appear perfect because that was your mask. And then you appeared perfect to other people, whether or not you were wearing the mask. Even to this day, it sounds like people are still saying to you, oh, you have it all together, you're this, you're that. And you're saying, no, you have to understand I'm taking strength from my weakness, and you should too. But are people responding to that, or are they still trying to cling to the idea of perfection?
I think people still try to cling to the idea of perfection because it's, it's scary for people. And let's be clear, people are mean. Social media has given people a platform, right, to just be mean behind cameras, behind podcasts, behind blogs or whatever. And so not everybody is on the positive, tip. So if you get out there with your weakness, like I'm doing now, people are going to be mean. There are going to be people that are going to be mean, about this podcast. There are going to be people that say, boo hoo over what you think is your trauma or your weakness. So I'm not sure that people will, in totality, ever really embrace their weakness because it's frightening and because it makes you vulnerable. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. So like right now, my Instagram profile says, something about like, I'm Team Jesus. I love the Lord. There are two things. I'm trying not to get diabetes. I'm trying not to cuss. The fact that I say to people, I'm a Christian, I love the Lord, but I cuss. Like sometimes I cuss. And depending on the situation, I cuss a lot. I don't like mean cuss. I'm not a like call you out your name cuss. But, I came up in hip hop generation. So some stuff I just cuss by effect, right? There have been several people who have sent me direct messages and emails and says, you should not tell people that. Like, why? You want me to let people believe that I don't cuss sometimes? Because I might be on this podcast sometimes and let like something slip. And I think that's what disappoints people. And that's the other reason why people are so sad is because we buy into the fact that they need perfection. You know what? It's one of the reasons why I'm not clergy. People say, you are definitely called. How are you not called? I am called by God. We're all called to do something. And I know that my call is to teach and preach the gospel in this context. Because when you become clergy, you have to buy into that perfection. It's one of the reasons why I love my pastor, because he gets up there and lets us know enough that he's crazy and off the hook and carries a stick. And just that little bit of humanity is refreshing. But he can't get up there and really be like, here are my issues. Here's what's going on with me. Here's what I feel about this. He can't do that because people, the masses, aren't ready to feel that way, because when, in fact, there is a mistake made by clergy, and there will be mistakes made by clergy, he doesn't have the luxury to do what I get the luxury to do on here, which is keep it 100.
Right.
Because I don't think people are ready for that. So some of us, God will send out to just be real, but other people unfortunately, they have to keep the mask on. And I pray for those people because that is a tough way. And for me, it almost killed me.
So talk more about that. We talked about when you turned 40, how you were feeling. Can you share?
Ooh, this is scary. You heard that deep breath I took? So I pretty much was suicidal since I was about 14, I think. And suicidal, I guess I need to explain. Like, I wanted to die. I should say that. I wanted to die since I was about 14. I used to work at the public library, and I would walk from my house to the library, 8 blocks. And I would contemplate, like, I should just jump out in front of the next car. However, I'm from a really small town. It's only 3 miles long and like 12 streets wide. And so, cars aren't coming very frequently. So luckily for me, whenever I had these kind of thoughts, like no car would come down the street, and I'd be like, okay, Lord, I hear you.
Yeah, that's God.
Yeah. I'm a pharmacist by degree. That was my original, pursuit of perfection. And I was an intern and just going through a lot personally. And I took like a handful of like digoxin. I hope the statute of limitations is out before they come arrest me. And threw it in my lab coat. And I was determined that when I got home, I was just going to take this handful of digoxin and make my heart explode. And it's a heart drug.
No.
And like after all these years, I can't remember how I didn't do it or why, but I know it involved crying and prayer and the Lord saying like, hey, get yourself together. Then in my late 20s, more drama, personal turmoil. I remember going into the kitchen and sitting on the floor with like a great big knife and thinking like, this is it. And this isn't a slit your wrist. Like, I'm going to just jab this straight up, Harry Carey, into my gut. I was crying because I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to live. But how else was I going to die? And I had heard a sermon maybe a year before. This was like my first year out of college, because I had heard a sermon when I was in college, and the minister said, sometimes you can't even call on God. Sometimes you need to take your finger and write his name in the dirt. And I sat there on my kitchen floor by myself, lonely and miserable and broken. And I just scratched the name of Jesus with my finger on the floor. Eventually I fell asleep. I woke up and I was better.
Praise God.
I say this because there are people who spend their whole lives trying to survive. Usually they're broken as children, and we don't know them and we don't see them, and you don't know the pain that they are in. And it's hard for them, because when I looked around, everybody that was supposed to be my best friends or my life mate at the time or all those things, you feel resentful because you're like, how does nobody see this? Now, you have to come to the onus that you're wearing the mask and you're hiding it from people. So it's not really them. But you feel like that. You feel like this person isn't really my friend, because how do they not see me? How do you not know me? Because you think there's supposed to be some kind of supernatural wisdom. But if you're fighting to hide and you're in darkness, that's where the devil lives. Like,
Absolutely.
anything you keep in darkness is him. Bring it to the light. Bring it to the light, and then let God be God. There are people who certainly try to kill themselves. They try to slit their wrists or OD and all those things. But right now, I'm talking to the person who every day gets up and wants to die. You don't necessarily want to kill yourself, but you want to die. You want it to be over because the pain is too much.
Mm-hmm.
I am a living, breathing witness, by the grace of God, that he never allowed me to take my own life or allow some of the people that I felt like were trying to kill me emotionally or physically to do that, that I am still here. And I promise you, if you come into the light, it gets so much better. It gets so much better. I learned to love my life because I realized that sometimes life gives you onions. That's why it's honey and onion. People say, oh, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. There's a lot you can do with lemons to make it good, right? You can make lemonade, make lemon pound cake. There's all kind of good lemon stuff. Sometimes you don't get a lemon. Sometimes you get an onion, and the only thing you can do is sit there and eat it and cry, period.
Wow. So, with all of that, and let me just, digress for a moment. I'm a Christian as well. Maybe not, super duper Christian like you, but a Christian is a Christian. And I believe that everything that you have gone through and the reason why you are still here, it's a miracle, first of all. It's a miracle of God. God wants you here. And praise God that you came around to believe that you want to still be here too. So I'm thanking God for that. So with all of that, tell me and tell the listeners, what is the one thing that you've learned about life that you want people to know?
Oh, this is easy. After that horrible time in my late 20s, so I was 26 or 27, and so I was miserable. And I got out of bed one morning, and my feet hit the floor. I had said my prayers. Because, through all of this, it's not like I was a non-Christian. Like, through all of this pain and sorrow and whatever, I believed in the Lord. I just didn't believe he loved me. I read my Bible. I just didn't believe that the hope that was in there applied to me. So, I got up and said my prayers like I always do and read my Bible. And when my feet hit the floor, I realized something. Like I said, about 26 or 27, I realized I am never going to get out of bed in the morning and not be that little girl who they abused. Never. I can read all the books. I can say all the prayers. I can, develop and work and get great jobs and make lots of money and stay thin and all of that. But every day for the rest of my life, when my feet hit this floor, I am going to be a woman who was abused as a girl. And at that minute, I realized I could either spend the rest of my life trying to erase it, which would never happen because I can only be me. That's it. Your past is your past. Or I could learn how to be a healthy, phenomenal, dynamic, wonderful woman who was abused as a child. And I like to think that that's who I've become. By God's grace and his love and the supportive and wonderful people that he put around me.
Well,
you are never going to outrun your past. So the greatest lesson I ever learned was to accept what is. Because people don't want the truth. One of the greatest lines in movie history is from A Few Good Men, where Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise says, I want the truth. And you can't handle the truth. It's so true. We can't handle the truth. We don't want to deal with the truth. But dealing with the truth is the greatest, most powerful, most positive thing you can do in your life. The lesson that I learned, going back to your question, the lesson that I learned was that no matter what, my truth is my truth. And I have got to live with it and thrive with it and survive with it.
So you don't seem to be concerned about whether people think you are crazy in what you're doing.
No. Well, that's only because, I will say this, that's only because people have been calling me crazy my whole life. Like literally my whole life, people have said I was crazy. Doing this podcast and living the life that I currently live as a, kind of Christian lifestyle personality and blogger and opening myself up is really giving my life away and putting myself out here for, the criticism, the judgment, but also the love, and I just try to gravitate towards the love. I try to gravitate towards the honey and deal with the onions as I must. It's like I always say, like life is sweet and sometimes it stinks, but it is always worth living. Always.
Absolutely. And it's what you make it, because you certainly are a great example of life being what you make it. You have gone through unspeakable things, but you've also gone through, as we said, very joyful things, and you've put all those things together in your own type of honey and onion syrup, and you're continuing to get better. So there's another example of that allegory. So let me ask you one more question. So we were talking about crazy. We talked a lot about crazy, and somebody's calling you crazy regularly. What does crazy mean to you?
So, it's interesting. Part of my medical background is I did a lot of research and study in psychopharmacy, right? And understanding the way the brain works, understanding mental illness, and understanding the way pharmacological drugs work on our brain. The term crazy should not be synonymous with mental illness.
Right.
Mental illness is an illness. It's like having diabetes or high blood pressure. The stigma that's attached to it is unfortunate, because when we have other things wrong with us, the flu or bronchitis, we immediately go to the doctor to get help, and we don't do that with mental illness. Crazy to me, and I'm going to steal this from Dave Chappelle, crazy is what we attach to people when we don't understand them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think when people say crazy, it's just things that they attach it to people when they don't understand it. They attach it to situations when they don't understand them. When we don't really know what is going on, we say it's crazy. And so that's what I think it's that people don't understand you or me or whoever else. If someone calls you crazy, it's because they don't understand. If you have a mental illness, you need to get treatment. That's a medical condition.
Right.
I'm so glad that you came on the show. You asked me the questions and dig in where you dig in. What would you like listeners to know about your experience as a coach and this experience, with me that you've had over the last few months?
Well, so many things come to mind, but the first thing that comes to mind is, being able to connect with people in such a deep way. Now, I've known you for years, and some of the things that I've learned about you through coaching, I wouldn't have known if we weren't coaching. Sometimes we don't have somebody who's willing to sit and listen to us. So to create the opportunity for someone is what coaching is about for me, and I'm really, really happy that I was able to do that for you the other times that we've coached and today. And I also am grateful that you were willing and happy to have me come on and do this, because it has really helped me a lot, and I hope that the listeners will really listen to you and what you're saying, because they need to see you. I'm someone who's known you for years, and you do appear, to someone who doesn't know you or doesn't take the time to know you, perfect. You have a lot of things that are really, really great, and even the brokenness is great, and they need to see that too. Praise God that you were born with the strength to go through all of this and to come out on the other side of it so that you can help other people.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode. We hope you enjoyed Honey and Onion and that you'll come back again soon. Please hit the subscribe button so that you can get all the new episodes. Remember, life is sweet and sometimes it stinks, but it is always worth living. I'm Kamryn Adams, and I'll see you next time.